Welcome back to Fierce Conversations with Toby. I'm your host, Toby Dorr, and today we're exploring two things that often walk hand in hand: love and resilience. Through season 1, we uncovered powerful stories of how love, whether for oneself, others, or life itself, fuels the strength to endure and thrive. Let's dive into some of those unforgettable moments. In episode 27, Filling a Niche, I spoke with Hannah Rumsey, who shared how love for her friend inspired her to start her own podcast, Friends Missing Friends.
In 2015, I was 23, I believe, and one of my closest friends just suddenly passed away, and I found out on Facebook. It was her birthday, so I went to post a happy birthday message on her wall. I actually posted it, and then I went to just scroll and look at the other posts, and I didn't see any other birthday message. I just saw rest in peace messages.
Oh my.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, like, that's the first time I really learned what I've read in books, when you just go totally numb, because I didn't feel anything for like 5 minutes because I was just like, well, it can't possibly be true. I just talked to her last week, that logic that doesn't really make sense. And I read, there were articles people were posting that announced her, passing. And I read one and another and another and another. I read like 10 of the articles that were like, she fell off a balcony, she died. And it wasn't until like the 10th article that it was kind of like a dial, like a volume dial turning from silent to screaming. All of a sudden it all came flooding in, and I just fell to the ground and I started screaming.
I thought about my friend every single day, but I never found any resources to help me deal with the loss of a friend. So I started my own podcast to normalize the complex loss of losing a friend.
You have created this beautiful podcast, which I was just a guest on. My episode was just released this week, and I absolutely love it. But it's called Friends Missing Friends. And your podcast description says that you talk with those who have experienced the death of friends, grief experts, and more to normalize the complex grief of losing a friend in a world that doesn't often understand. Together we can cherish and remember the friends that we miss. I think that's just beautiful. And I love that you found a place to create where there was a gap. So, you have found a lack of information and decided to fill that in and make a difference in the world. And I think that's just beautiful.
Thank you.
There were a lot of directions you could have gone. You could have written a book. You could have, post on social media. How did you land on the podcast idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was during the beginning of COVID, it's like 2020. I think the idea came to me. I'm also working on a book, but that's going to take much longer.
It does take longer, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things where the idea just came to me. I was like, oh, podcast. I think Friends Missing Friends was my first title idea. And then you cycle through other titles and you're like, yes, I like the first one.
Sometimes your first idea is the strongest. It's the best.
Yeah. Sometimes
I know when I was contemplating doing a podcast, and this word just kept swirling in my head. Fierce. And I couldn't stop thinking about that word. And then when somebody said, well, you should do a podcast. And I said, what kind of title could I use with the word fierce? And the person I was talking to said, fierce conversations with Toby. And it was like, of course, that's it. Gosh. So, I just love it. Yeah. But, sometimes you just get that nudge and that's the right choice.
Yeah. And especially if the nudge doesn't leave you, like you just said, it just kept swirling around in your brain. And so, the idea for the podcast kept swirling around in my brain. And I always feel like, someone told me that a plant uses the most energy to first burst out of the seed.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful. I love
that. That is beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, so starting is always the hardest, I feel like, and then over time, it gains momentum. So starting the podcast and like declaring that I was real, that it wasn't just an idea,
Right.
was the hardest thing, I think. But I do think it's a podcast for friends, made by friends, because my friends just kind of swarmed and helped. Like I had one friend compose the music, one friend did the artwork, another friend gave me advice, and it's just like one friend edited my trailer. And so it's just, it really, like, I felt so supported, and I love that it was like friends did that, because then it's about friends,
That is about friends. I think that's awesome, because really your podcast is about the beautiful relationship between friends.
This episode reminded us all that love, in its purest form, is a force that can sustain us through the toughest trials. Then, in episode 22, Thriving Beyond Cancer, Takiri Spencer shared a story of incredible resilience after facing life-altering setbacks.
I guess being diagnosed with stage 4 just did so much to me. I would say like that was definitely like my biggest trauma that caused positive change for sure, because just like you said, when you get a diagnosis like that, it is really put in perspective like, wow, how much time do I have here? Like, there's no more wasting time and messing around. It's so interesting though, because literally probably 4 months before my diagnosis, I was sitting with a friend in LA, and I was telling her how I've always wanted to have like this healing center and help people heal from like different diseases and things like that. How can we help people heal, right? Not knowing at all that months later I would be going through what I was going through, that I would be diagnosed with cancer.
She tells us, I lost everything that thought defined me, but I found something deeper. Resilience isn't about bouncing back, it's about moving forward, even when it feels impossible.
And I learned, like, even before my oncologist told me that you don't have cancer anymore, I had to learn how to thrive. Like, my focus was on living and thriving. Once I started focusing on that and doing things that I love to do and reading and being in the sun and living and smiling and laughing, like, yes, I was still going through treatment and all of that, but I stopped making the treatment in cancer be like the number one thing in my life and what I was thinking about. And I started making thriving being the number one thing. That, a month and a half, 2 months later, my doctor's like, there's nothing there.
It's stories like these that redefine what it means to persevere. In episode 25, The Importance of Contradiction, we explored how love and resilience work together with Brittany, whose journey exemplified this intersection beautifully.
When I was in high school and I moved in with a foster family, just choosing to stay there instead of going back when I felt like it was my responsibility to take care of my mom, regardless of the conditions. Like I really believed that. And so deciding to stay in this environment that was healthier for me, and it felt like walking away from my mom and my brother and my family. That's probably
That is hard.
She tells us it was hard for her to learn to rely on other people.
I didn't really talk about it in the book, but the day I actually sold it to Zibby Books, my grandma passed away. And so I lost Lewis in the book, and then my cousin was killed, and then my grandma passed away, and I lost an uncle. So as I was going through this whole publishing whirlwind, I lost quite a few people, and it was really hard. Like, one grief is already life-changing. You have to become a whole new person. So yeah, the past few years have been hard in that way. And I think the way I've dealt with it is, therapy and, relying on my support system, which has always been hard for me, just having to be self-reliant. I've come back to like trusting that I can actually rely on other people, which is really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could tell it's hard, in reading your book, because in so many places, there's just nobody you could rely on. You kind of just had to make your own space.
This conversation was a powerful reminder that resilience often starts with the love we show ourselves. Throughout season 1, my guests shared practical advice for cultivating both love and resilience in our lives. Here's Leslie Amati from episode 33, Crossing Cultural Boundaries, with one of my very favorite takeaways.
If you're interested in Leslie's book, if you join her email list, you will certainly know when it's available. So I think that's beautiful. What's the title of your book?
Road Between Two Hearts. A Black American bride discovers Iran. And if I can briefly explain where the road between two hearts comes from, it may sound like it's the connection between a man and a woman, the love Wood and I had. That's easy to assume, but it really isn't referring to that. It all started with that, but it expanded to a heart between me and the man, my husband, and it spread to my heart to all of the people that I came to know and love in Iran. And so there's an expression in Persian that's like, Persian language is full of all these kind of quotes, and it says, a road can always be found between two hearts.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Can you say that in Persian?
Yes. Del be del ra dare.
I love that. I think that that is such a beautiful language to hear.
It is to me too, Toby.
And I love how you combined that and made it into the title of your book, and it has a special meaning in Iran, but it also has a special meaning because we know it's a love story between two people. So I kind of like titles that have that double entendre.
Yes.
My book did that with Living with Conviction. So I just think it just expands the possibilities of it.
A road can always be found between two hearts. Simple, yet profound, isn't it? Love and resilience are two of the most powerful forces in life, and throughout season 1, we've seen how they transform even the hardest journeys into stories of triumph. Thank you for being part of this exploration with me. If this episode moved you, share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And don't forget to subscribe to Fierce Conversations with Toby for more stories and lessons in 2025. Until next time, stay fierce.